guys, welcome to the third instalment of my bass collection. It feels like yesterday that I filmed the first one of these when I first started this channel, so to think it's been just under 3 years is kind of an insane thought, but thank you very much for still being here if you've been here since the start, and if you're newer, thank you very much for joining along. Here comes my cat, right on timing. Hello! Meow! I don't think you can see him, right? I'm sure he's really thrilled right now. Ironically, he was in the last one as well. Meow! He thinks you haven't fed him, but you have. But yes, anyway, I digress. This one's going to be a bit of a different one than the last two because obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, this house flooded earlier this year, and although it looks very nice and we've managed to make something really nice out of it, it actually hasn't had any work done to it. You'll see in a second kind of what it's looking like in this room, but we've made the most out of it. We're basically camping in the house, but last time I went kind of all around the house and showed. I won't necessarily be doing that this year for obvious reasons, but I also am going to be probably not showing as many basses because I've had to sell quite a few as well for obvious reasons. So I don't know how long this video is going to be, but there's still quite a few and I'm very, very grateful to have all of them. You guys are a bit taller right now because when I show the basses I'm going to need extra room. But we'll start down here and then we will move upstairs, but it's very cozy in here, so. Okay, so I've actually employed my dad to do some of the filming because I still can't fit them in the shot. It's the wonderful thing about basses is they're really long. So, bass number one is the PGB1, and if you're a fan of Slipknot or Paul Gray, then this will look very familiar to you. This is one of the oldest basses in my collection. I've had this since I was 12 at Christmas. Very, very lucky to have it because these very rarely seem to come up on the market, and for anyone who doesn't know, the reason I started playing bass is because I saw, just by chance, a video of Paul Gray from Slipknot teaching how to play duality on bass, and something about that video made me go, that's what I want to do. I couldn't tell you why bass exactly, I didn't even know what a bass was when I watched that video, but it made me want to do it and I haven't looked back since. So I probably wouldn't be playing, or at least not as early as I did, if I hadn't seen that video. That was just before my 12th birthday, so I was 11 at the time, and then not long after started playing bass. So very, very lucky to have this. Not something I ever actually expected to own, but it's based off the Ibanez ATK models. It is an Ibanez bass anyway. But yeah, it's a beautiful bass. Ash body, one of the heaviest basses in the collection as well. And it's very, very cool because it's also got Paul's signature on the back. So that is printed on, but it would have been, you would have done it for them to then put onto the basses. So that's bass number one. Okay, so bass number two, another bass that I never expected to own for a totally different reason. So this is the Epiphone EB-3. Reason I never expected to own one of these is because you may have heard me say in previous videos that I actually wasn't a fan of the SG/EB body shape. Andy Fraser has totally changed that for me and now I love it. That's the reason that I've actually got this bass. It's second-hand, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got some of the clearest harmonics I think I've ever heard on a bass. They ring out even acoustically, it's not just the pickups, the whole bass just seems to ring out really nicely. I'll put a link in the description because I did do a cover of Portrait of Tracy on this, and it was never a bass that I'd expect for that to sound good on, but it's the perfect bass to play that on because it really is so clear and rings out so nicely. But yeah, it's a really gorgeous bass, not too neck divey. Some of them can be, this one isn't, and it's also pretty light as well. Ironically, the demo of this bass I demoed the day of the flood, and in that video, at the end of that demo, you can hear me talking about what's happening, and I was showing a bit of footage of the water and everything. So kind of a funny, we've come full circle with this, so yeah. But it's a gorgeous bass and I absolutely love it. So bass number 3. This is a very, very special one for me. Again, they're all special, but this one again has a lot of history for me. It's one of the older basses in my collection. I think I got this when I was about 14. I've done probably the most gigs ever on this bass. I used it solidly for about 7 years and it's never failed me. I've never had an issue with it. It's an absolutely incredible bass. It's the Ibanez Soundgear SR700. Actually came from Cash Converters, and I can't believe my luck because it's one of the best basses I've ever played and probably will ever play. It's also very, very pretty. When I demoed this, I actually called the video Meet My Best Friend, and that is still true. It's also an incredibly light bass, unlike some of the others. Taped up the strap because the strap keeps coming down. Little hack for you there. But yeah, it's a gorgeous sounding bass. I've done so many things with this bass. Some of the jams, I think one of the main jams I've done on this is called Dogma, and you can really hear, like, it's really easy to bend on. The neck's really nice and slim. It's very familiar to me as well because I did start on an Ibanez Soundgear, a lower budget model, which I still have and you'll see later. So yeah, works really well for me because I've got quite dainty hands. It's always a nice bonus. But not sure how easily you can see, but the wood grain on this is absolutely stunning as well. But yeah, I think if it shows up on the camera, you can see all the buckle rash from the amount of gigs I've done on it just here. I've just knocked the lamp. There's another one. But yeah, it's a really gorgeous bass, so very happy to have it. So bass number 4. This is my first ever bass. This is what started it all. I liked it because it reminded me of Paul Gray's bass, and it's also an Ibanez, but it's also extremely dainty, and obviously being 4'11" and very petite, starting on this, I'm still the same height now as I was when I was 11, but starting on this was an absolute dream. There really is something to be said for starting out on an instrument that is comfortable for you to play versus starting out on one that's really hard and that's really hard to make it sound good. Not that you have to start on a really expensive instrument, because there's some amazing budget instruments. I would consider this one of the best kind of higher end of the budget instruments that you can get. So if you are a beginner or you know someone that wants to play, I would definitely recommend this. Something you've probably noticed that's a bit strange about this bass is it's strung up left-handed. That is because I set myself a challenge of learning bass left-handed. I'm still in the midst of that challenge, so kind of haven't done any updates because this year didn't exactly go as planned, but that's why it's strung up left-handed. Thought it was good because it's the first bass I started on, so why not use it to start all over again? But yeah, it's an Ibanez SR300. Very, very gorgeous bass. First guitar of the video. This is, and it's a very catchy name, the Yamaha APX500II. I've had this for absolutely years. I think I was about 14 again when I got this. One of my favourite acoustic guitars I've ever played. It sounds beautiful, but again, it's also quite petite, so it works very well for me. Very, very lovely guitar. Really light. I know acoustics are light in general, but some of them can be really neck divey. This one isn't, so I'd highly recommend it. Really, really love this guitar. Okay, so instrument number 6. This is the Anaconda Crusher CX4. That is CEX4. This is the first ever and only custom bass that I own. Very, very grateful to have it. Again, not something I ever thought I would own. Got this when I was 17 and It's an absolutely stunning bass. I got to choose everything on it, so everything you see I decided on. Funnily enough, it's got quite a complicated active preamp section, and these days, the older I get, the more that I want things simpler, but I still absolutely love this bass, and again, it is a point in time, but one of my absolute favourite basses. The neck is very similar to the sound gears. It's nice and slim, it's got a really nice profile, C-shaped neck. The headstock even reminds me a bit of the sound gears, so it's a very familiar feeling bass for me. It really feels like home. Absolutely amazing sounding bass, and weirdly, I don't know if any of you get this with instruments, but some instruments feel really tight and other ones feel really loose. This one feels really loose and it's really easy to play, and again, it is one that's really easy to bend on. I know, I'm sure some of you are thinking, why would you need to bend on a bass? But that's because in my solo bass jams, obviously I do a lot of bending and kind of solo-y stuff, but if you want to know more about that, I'll put a link to my original music in the description, and also a link to a video I did called Why Do You Play Bass Like That, which goes into the details of why I play the way I do when I do that stuff. So, instrument number 7. This is a Fender Strat, American made, based off a 64 Strat. This, again, I got when I was 17, and I got it because of John Frusciante. I saved up for about 2 or 3 years just to get this guitar, and obviously I know John's is mainly a 62, but this was the only one I could afford, and I'm absolutely over the moon with it, and it still really reminds me of him. I love the sound of this guitar. I know Strats sound a certain way anyway, but this has just got such a warmth to it, and it's just really nice to play. Again, really loose feeling as well, which is something I like. I'm not a huge fan of when instruments feel really kind of stiff, but it's a gorgeous instrument. So again, I had this for quite a few years. Very, very grateful to have it. But yeah, I love it so much. So, we've moved upstairs and I've now got my War of the Worlds Christmas jumper on, because of course. But first bass of the upstairs range is the £20 bass, I call this. Not because it weighs £20, because it costs £20. This is a Ventura Jazz bass. It's a great sounding bass. I actually demoed this and called the video £20 could buy a great bass, and this bass proves that it's true. But the scratch plate, I took the original one off because it was supposed to be tortoiseshell and didn't look like tortoiseshell. It looked like someone took a pixelated picture of a doner kebab and then just pasted it onto the thing, and it kind of made me feel a bit sick. So my dad, Mr. Engineer and cameraman now, actually made me another scratch plate, and we've scratched our names into it, just here and here. So now it actually looks much cooler. The funny thing about this metal as well is that anytime you do slap bass, you can see where your finger is actually scratching into it. Not sure how well it shows up, but just there. So you can see where my hands end up. But yeah, I love this bass and I think it's a great sounding bass, and surprisingly light as well and not neck divey. But yeah, moving on to bass number 2 of upstairs. Don't know what number we're actually on now, so I'll put a counter up on the screen when I've had a chance to go back and watch. But this is an Ibanez Soundgear SR1000. This used to have frets and I got them taken out by the same guy who made the Anaconda bass, Andrew. Definitely have a chat with Andrew because he's a very meticulous person and it really shows in all of his work. So he's done a great job removing the frets of this. Reason I took the frets off of this is because it's actually a through neck, and I think that lends itself much better to a fretless bass. And I didn't have a fretless bass either, and I wanted something that felt familiar enough because I'm not particularly a fretless player. Funnily enough, I was talking in another video about, someone asked, do you play fretless? And I said yes, but if I picked one up now you wouldn't know it. Reason being is because I set myself the challenge to learn Teen Town on a fretless, did that, posted a video, and then kind of went, oh yeah, I've done that now, and then I kind of didn't keep it up as much as I should have. So something maybe in the new year that I should really pick up again, because it is a really lovely bass and I do like playing fretless, so, and I know I can do it. So yeah. Bass number, I don't know how many, look on the screen. Really heavy, Ibanez ATK, ATK310. This is again the one of the second oldest bass I own, second bass I've ever owned. Again, reason being because of Paul Gray. It did have a scratch plate on, but I've taken that off because it looks cooler, but kept the screws in because sounds very similar to the Paul Gray bass, but I would say this has a slightly warmer sound to it than the Paul Gray. The Paul Gray is a very aggressive sounding bass, whereas this is much smoother sounding, but they're not a million miles apart in the grand scheme of things. Very, very heavy, because again it is an ash body. But yeah, I think this bass cost about £50? £90, there you go. Cost £90. So very, very lucky to own this, even if it is very heavy, but it sounds great and it's worth the wait. So, third upstairs bass is one that tends to fool people a lot. So, this is actually a vintage bass, and no, I don't mean it's actually from the 60s. The make is vintage and it just looks very convincing. It didn't start that way, but Dave actually kind of modded it and it looks pretty epic. And anytime people see this bass, they end up asking how old it is, especially on pictures, but it even sounds old. I call it the C bass because I put my logo on the headstock and I kind of slimmed down the headstock as well because I just prefer the look of it. But I've never changed the strings on this bass, it's completely dead. But that's part of the charm for me, so I don't actually want to change them. It's a lovely, warm, rounded sounding bass. I did do a video called Are All P Basses the Same, in which you can hear how different this sounds when compared to certain other ones, like an ultra modern P bass or a kind of a P bass that's based on an old one but isn't old. The answer is no, they don't all sound the same, but weirdly this was many people's favourites, even though it's the most muffled and the most dead sounding, but it's such a classic tone, so I really, really love it and it looks awesome. Speaking of P basses, we have the Sire V504. This is, again, I say this about all my basses, but it's one of my favourite basses. Having had to sell a lot of them, I've pretty much only got favourite basses now, which is fine by me. Again, very, very grateful to have this one. It's got a roasted maple neck. It's actually lacquered on the front, on the fretboard, but not on the back. It's got a satin finish, which is something that I'm very happy about because I can't stand when my hand keeps getting stuck on a really sticky finish on the back of the neck. So I much prefer the fact that they made it satin. Got the classic Sire rolled edges. Never ever felt a sharp fret or a sharp edge on a Sire. I don't know how they do it, especially for the budget, but they're just really, really well made basses. Again, really, really warm sounding bass. Not as dead sounding obviously as that one, but just a very rounded sound, but cuts through really nicely. So, absolutely gorgeous bass. Not very heavy either, and really easy to play. I'll do a cut on this one because it's really heavy. This is a guitar that is absolutely worth the wait as well. This is the Adam Jones Epiphone Les Paul. It's one of the art series, and surprise, surprise, it's the Not Dead Yet by Julie Heffernan, which out of all the art series ones that have been released, I think this is my favourite. Second favourite is the second to last one they released, which looks very HR Geiger. Not sure what the piece of art is called, but I loved that one. And the third favourite is probably the portrait with a mouse. But yeah, stunning guitar. I've been a massive fan of Tool for absolutely years, probably since I was about 14. Again, not something I ever expected to own. I got really, really lucky to have this. So it's quite an uncanny thing, because when you play this, because it's actually got the same pickups that Adam Jones uses, it sounds just like him. They were wound in a particular way, and to make these they actually had to get in touch with the guy who made the original ones that were in Adam's guitar, because he didn't actually work there anymore, and thankfully he agreed to do it again. So it's uncanny when you plug it in and you think, it's Adam Jones's sound, no matter what you do with it, it just sounds like him, but in a good way. Again, it's actually quite a diverse sounding instrument, but it's a very heavy sounding instrument as well, obviously, because it's got the Seymour Duncan in the back. As a massive Tool fan, this was a must-have, but something that I thought I would never actually own. I can't quite believe my luck, but yeah, very, very gorgeous guitar. I love the fact they put the burst on the back of the neck as well. I know on some of them they didn't actually do that, so the fact they did it on the Epiphone is pretty cool. So this is actually one of the guitars that I have demoed. Obviously I mainly demo basses, but I just had to demo this because it's really special to me. I played some Tool songs in it, of course, how could you not? So I'll put a link in the description if you would like to check that out. So, yet another bass that I didn't expect to own, and definitely didn't expect to love as much as I do. But this is a Harley Benton. It's based off the Hofner violin bass, of course. Actually very, very comfy to play and sounds amazing. So when I demoed this, it gave me probably one of my favourite songs ever. It was called Cosmic Cruise. And the fact that it worked so well for that song kind of blew me away, because it's quite techno-y and spacey. Not the kind of thing you'd expect something like this to play, but it really lent itself well to it. And again, I'm really astonished actually at how nice this is to play, and two, how great it sounds. This actually was a gift from our friend Bob, so thank you very much, Bob. Yet again, you are an absolute legend. But yeah, stunning bass, very light obviously because it's a semi-hollow body. Got all the switches. Yeah, very, very nice bass. So, for those of you that have been on the channel for a little while, this bass is going to look very familiar, and I'm sure you've probably been waiting for it. Yes, I still have it. Yes, I still play it all the time, and yes, I still love it. Still one of my all-time favourite basses. This is the Schecter Exotic P4, and it's one of the clearest, most amazing sounding basses I've ever owned, as well as one of the coolest and most gorgeous instruments I think ever created. Both the top and the back of the bass are absolutely stunning. Let's see if I can show you. It's got an ash on the back, and then it's got a zebra wood on the top. It's gorgeous. The scratch plate is meant to simulate brushed metal, but it is actually plastic, so the fact that they managed to make it not look tacky, it's really classy looking, is really impressive. So yeah, absolutely love this bass. Again, a very loose sounding bass, or very loose feeling. Kind of not something you'd expect from a bass that looks as aggressive as this, but it's a really flowy bass, and as soon as you play it, it sounds confident and it makes you feel confident. So again, I have demoed this one. I'll put a link in the description. It's also given me some of my favourite songs ever. One is called Strange Love and one is called Rain March. I think they really show what this bass can do and the kind of range of sounds, how aggressive it can be but how warm. It's just a very atmospheric bass. So yeah, absolutely in love with this bass. Another bass I never expected to own. This is the Warwick Corvette team built, made in Germany, and I can't believe that I actually am holding this right now. I've wanted a Warwick for ages, and this fast became one of the main basses that I use for pretty much everything. It is probably the most clear bass I've ever heard. The Schecter's extremely clear, but something about this bass, it's just got all the frequencies, it's never harsh, it cuts through. I just never seem to struggle to get a decent sound out of it. No matter what anyone else's tones are doing, it doesn't seem to have to compete, it just kind of does it without overriding anything else. So don't know how they've done that, but they have. I very nearly lost this a couple of weeks after I bought it because it was downstairs during the flood, and had I not been at home, this would have died pretty much immediately. And there's no way I could have replaced it, so very lucky to have this and have it still be alive. But yeah, gorgeous bass. Again, given me some of my favourite jams ever. One of them being All Quiet, which is one of the most unexpected and unusual ones I think that's ever come out of an instrument for me personally, based on All Quiet on the Western Front, of course. But yeah, I'll put a link to those in the description, and I'll put a link to the demo of this too. So, this is the Ibanez Soundgear SR305. I'm not personally a huge 5-string player, but I am very happy to have this. It actually came out of a skip, and we rescued it, and it's actually cleaned up very nicely. I'm glad it didn't get killed, because it's far too gorgeous of a bass to just be thrown in a skip. I actually personally would have a high C on this, so that's how I tune 5 strings rather than a low B, but that's just my personal preference. But yeah, a very nice 5-string bass. This beautiful thing is the Admira Soledad. It's a classical guitar, of course, so really I should be holding it like this. But I've kind of this year mainly taken a massive interest in classical guitar. I don't know why, my brain just seems to suddenly go, by the way, you really love this now, and that's what you're going to focus on. So I've kind of been building up my repertoire of classical acoustic stuff, but I'm definitely no expert, but I just enjoy doing it. So this is a beautiful guitar. It's fairly budget in the grand scheme of classical guitars because they can run very expensive. Understandably, I think this one's about £600 new. This one is second-hand, but has kept its kind of form really nicely. There's not too many scuffs or anything. It is really easy to dent these things, so it's always nice to be careful, but very nice guitar. Gorgeous sounding as well. So here we have the Fender Telecaster HH. This is the 2017 model. I think they only made these for about 2 years, from 2017 to 2019. I don't know why, because in my opinion these are some of the best guitars that Fender have made. It's a Mexican one, sounds absolutely incredible. One of the most comfy electric guitars ever to play. I mean, you can see how nicely I can wrap my hand around it. Obviously not having the biggest hands personally. I am perfectly happy to play on wider necks, but I mean, it's a nice option to have if you have got a summer neck profile. It's just slightly less effort and just thinking forward to the future of my joints and everything, it's nice to know that they're not constantly being worn out. But I've done a lot of gigs on this guitar actually, and it has never ever once had an issue. It's never failed me. Probably done some of the biggest gigs I've personally done. Ironically on this guitar, not on bass, but grateful to have done them. Yeah, very grateful to have this too. I think I just caught the tail end of these ones, so it's a very beautiful guitar. Another thing about this guitar as well is it is extremely versatile. It is coil tapped, so you can run it in single coil or humbucking. But yeah, there is nothing that this guitar can't do. It almost at times sounds like a Strat and sometimes sounds like a Les Paul, which is pretty impressive. It can do the classic Telecaster sound, but it's far more, it just goes so much further beyond that as well. It's really, really impressive. So this is the JS300, I believe it's called. There is actually no serial number, so you have to put your own one on. But this, again, one of my favourite guitars. It is gorgeous. It sounds amazing. This one, I think at the time, was about £150. I don't know if they've gone up now or not. Probably not, but they're really well worth getting your hands on if you can. I can't recommend these enough. Really comfortable to play. Great if you're a beginner as well, because they've got a very nice neck profile, nothing too bulky, really nice string spacing. They're just gorgeous instruments. They've got a roasted maple neck as well, which is always nice to have. I always think roasted maple feels slightly different to anything else under your fingers. I find it easier to move around on. I think my hand doesn't get stuck as much as it does on just a regular maple neck. Maybe that's psychological, but it has been my experience pretty much every time I've used it. I don't know why, maybe it's because it's drier, but yeah. Gorgeous guitar, gorgeous sounding, and very, very surfy. Actually used it on some surf music recordings, so it really lends itself well to that. But yeah, one of my favourite guitar colours too. This one is the East Coast MB4. One of the most budget-friendly basses I own. Again, really great sounding bass actually. I have slightly modded mine. They don't come stock with these huge gold knobs. I'm still talking about basses. But they do come with black ones and they look a bit more classy, but I just really liked these, so I put them on because I wanted to. But yeah, this bass weirdly does Justin Chancellor from Tool's bass tone incredibly well. Considering Justin uses a wall bass, which is extremely expensive, I don't think I've ever even touched one or laid eyes on a real one, but I would love to one day. Considering this is like the total other end of the spectrum, the fact that it does that sound so well is really impressive to me. These things are really a joy to play. Again, I would say if you're a beginner as well, these are well worth it. They're just great basses. I did also put my logo on the back of this one. I seem to have a habit of doing that on things, but I think it looks nice, and it's got a bass clef on it, so I'm going to use it. So, first and only acoustic bass of the video. This is the Ibanez PGB1 No, I'm not exaggerating. That's the actual name. But this is one of the best and most comfortable acoustic basses I've ever laid hands on. This was actually a gift, so I'm really, really grateful. One of the best gifts ever. It's all rosewood, it's absolutely stunning. It really does remind me of John Frusciante's acoustic as well. That's part of the reason why Dave actually got this for me, because it reminded him of that and he knew I would love it. But apart from that, they're not too bulky either. Because they're more of a concert body, they're not like that when you're trying to play them. It's a gorgeous sounding bass. Not sure how in tune it's going to be right now, but not bad, not bad. But yeah, again, I have demoed this and it gave me a really unusual song called Dreaming. So I'll put a link in the description if you would like to hear this properly and in tune. It does have a tuner on it as well, so always a nice option. But yeah, not neck divey either, as some basses can tend to be, especially acoustics, so very, very nice. So, we've come to the end of the collection. This is the Squier Bass VI. Bit of an unusual one. It stands somewhere between a guitar and a bass. It's not strictly a 6-string bass, but it doesn't sound like a guitar either. I would say if you're a guitarist, you'll probably be more comfortable with this than if you're a bassist. For me, obviously getting more used to guitar now, this thing feels more and more familiar every time, but initially as just solely a bassist, I wouldn't say that it felt like I was playing a bass, but it was weird because it sounded like I was playing a bass. It's also got a whammy bar, which is cool. But I got this one when I was 18. It was actually my bass teacher Russ Sargent's bass. Sadly, the pickguard has got a bit sun-faded now, but I think it just adds to its charm. I actually did give this one to Dave as a gift, but then he also lent me one of his guitars, and then we were going, yeah, should we just share them? So I don't know if he's put this one in his guitar collection or not, but this is now kind of a communal instrument. So yeah, it's a really lovely and unique sounding instrument, and I'm very happy to have it. So we've come to the end of the bass collection once again. It's not going to feel like a day until I do the next one, I'm sure, but if you stuck around for this long, thank you very, very much. I know I don't go into every detail of every bass, and I know I don't demo them in this video. Reason being is because I do have demos of these already where I talk about all the specs, and if I was to do that, we would be here all day. I'm sure I wouldn't mind, and I'm sure some of you wouldn't mind, but I'm sure lots of you have far better things to be doing. So if you would like to see them, I'll put a link to the playlist I have on my channel called Demos, and you can see all of these beautiful instruments. Again, I am beyond grateful to own all of these. I could not have ever imagined owning any of these when I first started playing. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll put a link in the description to my original music. I hope you have a very, very happy new year. Hope you've all had a great Christmas if you celebrate it, or just generally a very nice day and had some nice time off. I hope you have anyway. But yeah, happy new year, and I will see you next year.